Prynawn da pawb a croeso nôl. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. We're now about to have our showcase event. And are you there, Alex?
Yeah, I'm not leading this, Chris.
No? Okay. Who's leading on supporting the COVID-19 response?
It's me, Chair.
Very good.
Okay.
I think we're ready to start, Nicola.
Diolch, Chair.
Would you like to kick off then, Nicola?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly now. Okay,
great. Thank you. So following on from Alex's presentation in the earlier session, this presentation talks more about our contribution to the COVID response. And obviously the diagram that you see on the slide there shows that the 4 areas where we both responded and contributed to the wider system. And I'll talk more about those as we go through now. So can I have the next slide, please? If you're wondering why it's the Director of Planning, Performance and Corporate Services that's presenting on this, it's because business continuity sits in my remit, but obviously it's been very much a team effort from everybody in the organisation, all my colleagues on the executive team. One of the big themes, then one of the major priorities, as everybody will be aware, is the well-being of the 86,000 strong NHS workforce in Wales. And this is a thread that runs through all our work in the COVID response space. All NHS organisations did a lot of work on well-being and providing resources and support to their teams. But we're the national lead for wellbeing, and we led on a national response and that part of the national response arrangements as well. But one of the things we did is we developed national resources, and we've been a repository for those through our website, as well as compassionate leadership, obviously underpinning that as well. And the triangle there just lays out the model of that. From self-care through to organisational national resources, and also to say that it's been well used. So we've had 25,000 views on that site since it was created in June 2020. Next slide, please. On our sort of direct contributions to the health and care system across the range of our functions, again, we talked about at the AGM. There's been a lot of work which has been done very quickly. This was a crisis response, so we've responded with that urgency. Targeted training where they were requesting or where we could see there was a need on supporting qualified staff in care homes and supporting that model. Infection prevention and control, obviously absolutely critical in what was a crisis that was brought on by an infectious disease. Critical care, again, for all the reasons that we'd understand. Remote consultation, so we talked about moving to digital, both digital services and digital education and training. But we've done targeted work on supporting our clinicians on training them in remote consultation, which is a different skill set. And then also behavioural change, largely around that infection control area. Push talked about our work, and Julie talked about our work on racial equality, and on we know that the differential impact of COVID on people from Black and Asian minority backgrounds. So we've done work on that, and obviously we talked about that earlier in terms of our major contribution to the Race Equality Board. We also released our own clinical staff. We employ a lot of clinical staff, both as trainers in the service, but also directly in our own organisation and our own services on a more corporate level. And we released those wherever possible to support the direct service response, and most of our clinicians did that. And as we talked about before, our senior leaders also supported the NHS Wales-wide response, including the Chief Exec supporting the NHS Wales Chief, and our Workforce No team, so not just Julie, but Julie particularly, but members of her team as well, leading aspects of the vaccination programme and other areas as well. So can I have the next slide, please? Again, another major priority of us, because we are the people that need to keep our eye on this for the NHS Wales community, is protecting and maintaining education and training. So we were the eyes and ears of NHS Wales on this in terms of protecting that future workforce supply and maintaining quality during what has been a very difficult 18 months. But obviously that supply can take between 3 and 10 years to come to fruition. So we were keen that we enabled our students and trainees to keep progressing with an eye on that future workforce. There was a major step change to digital delivery of education, which again, we've already talked about, and that sounds easy to say, but was an enormous amount of work done very rapidly across all of our teams. At the same time, the wider NHS was making a major step change, becoming digitalised itself. So we are now delivering digital education digitally, but in a digital NHS Wales as well. Obviously more to do, but that has been a major step change, and the pandemic accelerated all of that work. There's been extensive partnership between between us, universities and the NHS to support and maintain the placements for students and trainees within services that were changing extremely rapidly and extensively across all sort of settings, both in hospital and out of hospital, whilst also making sure students and trainees in liaison with your universities were kept healthy and safe. But with an eye on, as we talked about, maintaining progression, but also the quality of education and training, and all of that, again, an enormous amount of work to make sure that that's being managed well. In terms of that, students were redeployed in the first wave, and we managed that within the aim of making sure that they still progressed. But we also were instrumental in the decision not to redeploy in the second wave, which was a national decision. Although obviously students and trainees have continued to support the response through other arrangements, for example, working out of hours in vaccination centres through bank and other arrangements. And again, we've been happy to support them to do that. Next slide, please. There has been an impact on education and training, which we've been managing through our business continuity arrangements and monitoring that. In health professional education, which is nursing, AHPs and other professions, there have been some delayed graduations in the 2019 intake in a small number of universities, and we have witnessed a slightly lower fill rate in nursing during the year due to the second lockdown and the impact of homeschooling on those potential students. However, overall, the number of nursing students that started their education in the year is more than it's ever been and more than last year, because our underlying commission numbers have increased, which again we talked about in the AGM. Dentistry, as we all know, has had a significant disruption in service as a face-to-face treatment and care service, and obviously the actual characteristics of the disease have meant that dental care has been disrupted in general. However, most trainees have progressed and will continue to be supported, and we are monitoring those on an individual basis with the regulator. And recruitment from university, because undergraduates were similarly impacted into postgraduate training, has been difficult, but we are pleased to say with a lot of management, again, and influencing on the national stage, we will, all our recruits will start on time into their foundation training in September. With medicine, again, there's been disruption across all specialties, but surgical and other procedural skills, for the same reasons, and dentistry has had the biggest impact. And we are monitoring those on an individual basis, supporting individuals, and we will be probably feeling the effects of that for the next 1 to 2 years. But again, we're supporting those people to progress and receive quality training and education. In pharmacy, in the areas that we're responsible for, there hasn't been any impact. But obviously there's been a big upside as well, a massive increase in interest in NHS careers. And where possible, we've been supporting the system to take advantage of that. So for example, Cardiff Medical School is over-recruited and has had support to increase the number of places at an undergraduate level. Next slide, please. Similarly, with the wellbeing of the workforce, the wellbeing of students and trainees has been a major area of our concern as well. These people starting their careers in the NHS, and we want them to have a good start and to learn in a supportive manner, and obviously receive that quality education and training. So supporting their wellbeing within that has been very important as well. Similarly, extensive support resources and materials developed and hosted by us on the website. And the major issue and thing that we've been concentrating on is communication. And that's been communication with organisations, with our students and trainees are placed, with individuals and groups of students, trainees to manage uncertainty, as well as with their universities and training providers as well. And that's been through many means, including social media, online support, open meetings and forums. And that continues as we continue through this latter stages of the pandemic. Our professional support unit has also seen an increase in cases for sickness reasons, so people can self-refer there. And we've supported as an organisation by increasing their resources. And many surveys across all areas have been undertaken to understand what it feels like for our students and trainees and to inform our response and the support required. Next slide, please. And turning to us as an organisation, as I say, business continuity sits within my remit, but it's very much a team sport. And our priority ourselves has been to keep our staff safe and well. And we're very fortunate that we've had few cases within our staff group, which is a testament to our staff, because obviously that's not just about how they've behaved in work or with their work, but also in the rest of their lives as well. So we're really pleased about that. We moved to 100% remote working in the first and second waves, which is obviously a major change to our business model previously. But we also have had periods of our base at TDusky being open for business or wellbeing purposes. And I think that's been important as well for those people that wanted to access the building for those reasons. However, when the building is open, clearly we're adhering to all Welsh Government guidance. And again, thanks to our staff for helping us in that. We learned from the first wave to revise our business continuity plan, and we've used our crisis response mechanisms to manage the impacts, particularly on education and training appropriately. And I think that stood us in good stead, particularly in the really severe parts of the pandemic, the 2 lockdowns. As you know, and we're doing it today, board and other meetings have been held in public online. And again, we've all learnt new ways of doing that, and we revise our governance arrangements appropriately to support that as well. And as Alex talked about earlier, and we talked about our plans in the AGM section, we ensured our plans and resource deployment were agile during the year to make sure that we continued to respond, but also continue to keep our eye on that longer term future. So apart from that, it just remains me to say diolch o galon and thanks to all our staff for the enormous amount of work, their flexibility and agility and creativity has enabled us to respond well, but to continue with our longer term plans as well. And thank you to all of them. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Nicola. Are there any questions that have come through, Angharad? I can't see any questions for Nicola. It's certainly...
Sorry, Chris, I was on mute. No, there aren't any questions, but please feel free to put some in the questions panel if anyone would like to ask anything.
Okay. Thanks for that, Nicola. I mean, it's a considerable amount of work that has gone on during the COVID pandemic. Are we happy to move on? Our next presentation is on transforming education and training. And that is down to Push and Lisa.
So thank you. Yes, it is a joint thing. I'll be followed by Lisa, who's going to give her slant on these things. I'm going to be talking about the things that have happened within my directorate from medical, dental, pharmacy and revalidation support unit perspective. So I'm going to kick off with how our workforce is developing and has developed the past year and in the future. So if you look at foundation, we were asked to take new posts last August because of it just so happened we had a number of extra people qualifying in Cardiff, and we did that. And you can see that they've followed on into foundation year 2 posts in 2021. And on this year we've been asked to take an extra 30, and there's been 100% fill rate across Wales in foundation. But not just that, we've innovated in a number of ways by focusing some of these extra posts into primary care in new ways. We're really pleased with our secondary care recruitment rates as well. We've proportionately had a bigger increase than any other UK nation this year, and we've achieved over 95% fill rate. So we're really pleased with that, and that might be a reflection of COVID, but I also think it reflects what happens in the National Training Survey year on year, that Wales generally is the best place to come and train, which we're obviously pleased about as well. Our GP recruitment has been really exceptional too. From a baseline of 135 in 2019, we've recruited to over 200 in 2020, and really pleased to see that is maintained in 2021. That we're aiming for 160, but recruiting up to 200 if people are of sufficient standard to do so. So we're really pleased with the development of our workforce from a medical perspective. Next slide, please. If we move on to what we did during COVID, some of these things have already been touched on, but there was a considerable amount of redeployment which we managed across the whole spectrum of professions, and crossed specialty when necessary, and we actually delayed some of the some rotations where appropriate as well, so that people with skills could remain in those difficult posts, difficult areas. We've also developed our delivery of training in a digital manner, and also we, not just last year where we increased the amount of the interim foundation posts, which led to an increase in service and preparation for foundation posts. We have done that also this year as well. So considerable changes, not just in the delivery of training, but also assessment of trainees. ARCPs are done in a different way. We modified the outcomes to allow people to progress. So that's been a considerable amount of work, and much of which is going to remain as we move on, because many of these changes would have been things we would have been aspiring to in any case. From trainers and trainees perspectives, we've expanded our GP training capacity to match the increased numbers of GP trainees. As I say, many more of our online modules are now online. One of the biggest successes, I think, in the past year is to develop an interprofessional simulation team, which has included associate deans from nursing and allied health professions to join those in the medical team to provide an HEIW-wide simulation offering, which I think is really developing at pace. As I say, we had the highest score in UK for communication with trainees and trainers. It was commented on that our postgraduate dean had maintained communication with our trainees throughout the whole of the process. So those are really good things to have reflected upon. As you would need to, we had really good partnership with our 4 nation colleagues, looking at curricula, credential development, and all of the senior teams across the UK. We've got representation at national level, both from the postgraduate dean and from foundation, and also from the SAS, our SAS representative, who have leading roles in the UK within education. We hosted CopMed in Wales for the first time in February 2020, and Many people still refer to it as one of the best meetings that they ever went to, which isn't difficult, but when everything's hosted in London mostly, but that was very, very well received. We've maintained relationships with regulators, with Welsh Government, with our teaching providers, and with the medical schools, which is really important. And of course, our partnership with the BMA is continuing. So next slide, please. So what about quality? So we've altered our commissioning process, which used to be only about doctors and medicine, to have a multi-professional approach. And we plan to do that again once we're out of the COVID restrictions. The university health boards all found that very beneficial and useful to tie things together. And I think there's a long way to go on that. We also improved stakeholder engagement with the medical workforce planning alongside them to feed into the education training plan. And we're looking now, as has been mentioned in other forums, how to have a multi-professional approach to learning environments, for placements, and for all of our professionals that we need, who are all needed to develop our services in Wales. We were one of the first medical deaneries to be undergoing the new GMC quality assurance process, which was both well received, and it came back with a really positive report. We have kept our monitoring of quality across the whole of Wales, despite having to change it to a digital format. And we are continuing with all of the monitoring issues that we're addressing, and we are pleased that that has resulted in certainly one and possibly a second area coming out of enhanced monitoring in the near future. I think it's really important to talk about the Differential Attainment Board. We're linking very well with the GMC on this, because our aims in Wales and in HEIW on equality and diversity are mimicked and matched by those of the GMC. So some really good information coming, which I think can then be applied to other professional areas. From an improvement perspective, we've developed AaGIC, which is the Evaluation, Research, Innovation, and Improvement Collaborative. And as part of that, we are looking at bringing in all the improvement initiatives that we're currently doing, and all our evaluation initiatives that we're doing, to bring all of that into an annual report of our research activity. Pleased to say that the highest number of presentations at the National UK DMEC conference came from Wales. And as I say, we've had innovation both in foundation placements and in GP rollout of the 2+1 programme, which was leading the way in the UK. We've a number of other improvements that we've made as well, but let's move on to the next slide. So let's look to pharmacy. So prior to the new programme that was mandated by GPHC, we already had the successful implementation of the UK leading multi-sector programme, and that has put us in a good position to develop the new standards that are now required from the General Pharmaceutical Council, where we are going to move to 100% multi-sector and develop that as part of those standards. We have the best pass rate in the current year for provisional pharmacy registrants. So obviously we're very satisfied with that. We've had good attendance to our virtual events in 2020 compared with 2019, even though many of them have gone online. So that's a reason to be pleased as well. And we've had real positives in the e-learning for health and social care and within social care works for medicines administration. And you can see the multi-professional nature of what is being offered within our area, where dental colleagues have completed an adapted version of the basic life support and anaphylaxis treatment that pharmacy have run. So lots of things going on across our directorate, which is really, really good to see. Next slide, please. So we are increasing the numbers of multi-sector placements for the August 2021 intake and completely 100% by 2022. The strategic outline case was heard earlier on today of the initial education training standards for pharmacists, and is going forward to Welsh Government, where hopefully we can really develop the process of those standards. The first phase of quality management for foundation pharmacists is being agreed to, so we have a single quality unit across pharmacy, dental and medicine, applying the same standards and applying the same criteria to any issues that are arisen in quality of education, training and progress. We are developing a consultant pharmacist strategy, because I think that's where all professionals should be heading, and pharmacy is no different. And pharmacy is a really key part of the primary care agenda. And I think the education training standards, both for pharmacy technicians and pharmacists, will have a big role to play in the future of that. Next slide, please. So in the future, I've already talked about the initial education standards for pharmacists, and there's going to be deliverables every year over the next 5 years on that. And we need to engage with Welsh Government to deliver this 5-year programme. The governance has been established, and the post-registration intakes from 2022 onwards are going to require a different type of education. And we are well into negotiations with the health education institutions to look at the proposed funding of clinical placements within the undergraduate course, and how that will transition to learning outcomes that will lead into continued practice once qualified. We could go on about this alone, I have to say. The implementation of these new standards, which will meet the GPHC guidance, will be done by February 2022 for pharmacy technicians, and we'll have a strategic 3-year implementation plan for pharmacy technicians alongside those of pharmacists. Next slide, please. Our revalidation support unit has had some real successes in delivering both to support our Chief Medical Officer in his role as the responsible officer across Wales, and for GP-CPD that has long since been a function of this part of our directorate. So really good team that we've got there, and all of our regional face-to-face programs have been converted to free webinars, and the access to those has increased with over 1,000 attendees and over 83,000 website hits. We're developing new resources all the time, both in CBD and the Vital series, and we've got 5 new modules, including mental health during COVID, that we've produced. We collaborate with pharmacy, with Red Whale and the British Association of Gender Identity Specialists to produce modules that assist GPs in delivering care to patients across all of our country. We've translated the GP-CPD modules into Welsh, and we're playing an active role in developing the single education delivery system across HEIW. Next slide, please. And the 3D program, which used to be delivering doctors delivering for, I've forgotten what it meant now. It's in the past now anyway. We've got a new one which is called Discovering, Developing and Delivering in Healthcare, which is multi-professional, and that's been redesigned and delivered by Gwella. Produced a thought-provoking and really well written annual report of all the achievements of the people who undertook this program. And of course, it's updated to include compassionate leadership alongside along the lines that we have been developing across leadership across all areas. Next slide, please. So for dental, if we look at start with dental foundation training, we've introduced single lead employer service to all foundation training from last year. And despite the restrictions caused by COVID, we've had a really good outcome, really good set of outcomes for the dental foundation year. We've got different types of learning that have been developed to provide quality assurance, and we've got a different sort of supervisor approval process that we've successfully rolled out this year. Fit testing was necessary because of this, but one of the key things was that we used many more phantom heads and teeth to provide all trainees with simulation training in practice, which was curtailed otherwise. Core training, likewise, we had 100% fill rate for the first year and 97% fill rate for the second and 100% for the third year. So really good recruitment in that. And there are many of them we developed, redeployed to intensive care in the second wave, and have reflected on those experiences as lifetime experiences on those for those trainees. And they're all progressing despite the impact of COVID. For specialty training, we've had 8 trainees successfully complete. 5 are utilizing the period of grace that they need to extend training due to COVID and to some of their competencies to be completed. We've got a GDC review of our specialty training that's ongoing at the moment, and we look forward to the conclusion of that. Next slide, please. So the CPD that we deliver has increased by 18% despite COVID since last year, because they are now online. They've been well received. They've been well. The feedback has been excellent, and we're really pleased that we've developed these to allow, and this has assisted many of our trainees to achieve their requirements in the year. Next slide, please. So from workforce perspective, I think we've got a lot of work to do, and we're looking forward to upskilling the workforce for dental nurses to do some procedures, and dental therapists also to have an increased number of placements. We're looking at employment opportunities for hygienists and therapy students with NHS bursaries in the future, which has not been all the way we've done things in the past. We're supporting the GDS reform with Welsh Government, and looking at attend anywhere training specific to dentistry. And there's lots of e-support training for practices that we've developed as well. We want to support the workforce through the pandemic with specific training on working in these conditions, things such as minimally invasive dentistry, specialist fluoride application, and four-handed dentistry opportunities. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Thank you very much. I think I went over my 15 minutes, but I think we've got a bit of time to allow Lisa to do her bit. So over to you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Push. And what I'm actually going to describe is that I arrived at HEIW, and a significant amount of work has been undergone sort of over the last few years to embark upon reshaping and redefining the health professional education in Wales. And what I'm going to share with you is what does that mean, and actually how does that impact actually on the work that we're doing going forward. So you could argue that this is a bit of a look back and a look forward, because it is going to sort of feature later on as well. So the first thing I want to say is that this piece of work has actually involved a significant number of people, and actually they need to be very proud of actually what they've done, because it's involved in this programme actually work from system partners, health boards, HEIs, learners, regulators and professional bodies. So many people actually were involved actually in this piece of work. And as I described actually on my first slide, really, this is one of the largest procurements actually in NHS Wales, and the cost of that is worth over 1 billion over the next 10 years. So that was a significant amount of money, and therefore, as you can imagine, that needed a lot of careful thought, planning, and to getting it right. because this is once again developing and enhancing the workforce that we've currently got in order to accommodate new ways of working. And we've mentioned COVID as to how that has impacted, and actually developing new roles going forward as well. So this is really, you know, sort of groundbreaking stuff. So the contracts that we have now actually awarded will produce actually over 40,000 new health professional registrants over the next 2 years. So that's a key element actually, and our role actually within the NHS is not only to educate people, but obviously it's part of that recruitment, that actually sort of development and education to retain people and obviously to sustain people working in the NHS so that they can deliver that wonderful care to patients. There are key themes that come through this, and we've actually mentioned and touched on them earlier. We actually are embedding into professional learning. This is something we are going to be hearing much more of. You know, Push and I actually are absolutely clear that, you know, there are great opportunities for interprofessional learning to bring about better outcomes actually for patients. The Welsh language is at the heart of this. And obviously compassionate leadership. And compassionate leadership actually starts with learners. Some people actually think that it's only managers that they have to demonstrate compassionate leadership, but it starts actually at the very beginning. Because if you think of it, even our learners actually and our students who then become registrants do lead by example. So they are leaders from the word go. So the opportunity here was actually to change the way that we worked and deliver a more local and regional provision so that it took into account actually what the health needs of those localities were, to understand actually what the workforce needs were in order to deliver the services, and actually how we actually could then progress people actually in Wales, and also actually to develop actually services in a quality way where if people actually are working in Wales, that they're comfortable to actually move around Wales to gain more experience as well. So this, as I said earlier, will actually strengthen the delivery of quality and partnership working. This is a significant part of it because we can't actually do this independently. We actually rely on our system partners to do that. But more than anything, actually, it's about actually collaborating actually with healthcare services and service users. We've heard actually the example previously is actually that we can't do things to people. We have to do things actually with people, and that involves actually our staff, our learners, and the public at large, because they need to understand how actually that service change is going to impact on them, and they've got to realise actually those benefits too. So in actually the little bubbles at the bottom. That gives you a flavour how big actually this commissioning agenda was. There were 18 lots, in other words, there were 18 different component parts, which broke down into 50 different sublots. So there was a huge amount of work undertaken. And it's pleasing to see that that generated 69 bids. Normally, actually, sort of, you know, that's a significant aspect because that means people are interested in this way of working, and also interested in delivering better care and education in Wales. It was very pleasing to see that our universities all actually did engage in this process, and actually as a result of all the bids that they put in, we had a significant amount of 85 evaluators, and that is a task in itself actually to evaluate every single one of those bids that came in on every panel, to have really good criteria, good standards, good principles on how to measure the outcomes. And of course, actually that was actually 20 plus that you were evaluating every single one of those bids in order to actually offer that consistency. So that's a significant amount of work, and it's a credit to everybody involved in that arena of how this has actually really turned out. So if I can have the next slide, please. So what are the benefits? Because this is about, so what? We've done it, what are the benefits? And what is the added value that we are going to bring to ultimately to patients? So what we are going to see now is that significantly more health education will be delivered in North Wales, and that will include paramedics, dietetics, speech and language therapy, dental hygiene, and operating department actually practitioners as well. So in other words, this is actually where we are diversifying and opening up actually opportunities for people to access these courses across Wales, not just in designated areas. And as you can see there, up in North Wales, we are going to be developing a multidisciplinary academic hub, which is actually quite exciting as well. So we've actually opened up new contract opportunities, and we have got new providers to deliver some of this education. It's quite encouraging actually to feel actually palpably really the excitement that they've shown actually in receiving that contract, and they are actually really exciting to be able to formulate and develop that for their location as well. As well as that, we've actually seen across all the health boards increased opportunities for more support workers. And this is quite important in terms of our recruitment, our pipeline, where we can see support workers who are coming into the NHS to do some, and they have, then the doors are opening, and actually they see the aspiration of they can become registrants too. The other success there is actually 2 outputs of education for midwives. That was an ask, and therefore we've actually managed to achieve that as well. So as you can see, the benefits are really actually started to shape up. So if we go on to the next slide, please. Actually, and we've got to remember that we have got different demographies. We've got rurality as well as actually obviously urbanisation as well. And okay, sort of, as you can see a note here, and then actually what we can see here, we've actually got to increase in strength and placement. Push actually mentioned this. This is going to be a real foundation of sort of how we actually deliver our education going forward. And I'm really excited to explore and develop even further more placement opportunities in primary, social and community care. And that realises our students can understand it's just as good actually to, well, if not actually it's really enriching to work in primary, social and community care, not necessarily to be drawn back into secondary care straight away. There are massive opportunities actually to help actually sort of patients in the community, and they're quite exciting areas to work in. We've learned over COVID about how we've speeded up our knowledge, our understanding and our usage of digital sort of technologies, and that is one of the areas that has actually speeded up enormously. We're actually obviously adopting that and realizing what does that mean for not only actually our learners but our current workforce as well, because obviously they're now actually quite adept actually at Teams, dare I say, but also using more digital actually aspects as well. So that's something we want to build on, and that's been actually sort of driven through this as well. So I mentioned interprofessional education previously, but also it's about flexible and part-time routes. We've listened actually to people, to the health boards and to students, and actually understood actually how sort of we need to be a bit more flexible. We can't be rigid in how the courses are delivered. So working with the HEIs, we've actually seen actually how we can do step on, step off, and be flexible actually in terms of actually how we can deliver that. And by listening and actually undertaking through that sort of exercise, we are going to get actually the workforce actually that we want actually who are comfortable to work in that way as well. Because even our existing workforce is now actually seeking flexibility in the way that they're working as well. So actually, as I mentioned before, regional collaborative education consortium working arrangements, much more work with regions and actually sort of with to understand what their needs are, and they will differ, and we need to respect that. So therefore working as to how we actually accommodate and adapt to the courses going forward. And the compassionate leadership I've actually mentioned as well. It starts from the very word go. It doesn't actually come in actually once you're a registrant. You've got to adopt actually those principles straight away. And on to the next slide, please. So this is about our socio-economic duty. This is an area I'm actually quite passionate about. In other words, it's really supporting students from disadvantaged backgrounds. A very easy 2 words to say, but what does that actually mean? And I think we need to go underneath that to understand and actually probably talk to them to say, what does that mean and how can we help you in order to access, the wonderful actually NHS actually careers actually they can actually enter into and then bring them aboard as well. We've also had a focus on and basically actually sort of looking at applicants that have been in care, especially actually children, young people who have actually coming out of looked after care. That is a challenge in life for them. They've come out from being looked after children, and they then actually have to start actually to stand up on their own 2 feet to actually find somewhere to live and actually somewhere to work. And this is actually where we can work with them and offer the opportunity of coming to work in the NHS, because we have got so many careers we can offer them. And it's about actually offering them apprenticeships or even actually going into that degree programme. but sometimes it's working with them for them to realise what the opportunities are. And similarly actually with the young carers, where they probably can't actually sort of move out of actually where they live. So how can they access that quality education actually in the area that they work, in order that they can actually sort of really carry on actually with their family caring arrangements as well. So huge actually opportunities there. And actually obviously the high socioeconomic deprivation, we need to work with those areas to understand what that actually means, work with the young people, listen to those young people and see what we can do to offer actually that access as well. So these are the elements that we're actually not actually us actually developing, but we're actually developing that ethos with our HEIs as well as actually our sort of boards as well, because getting actually sort of a qualification is one thing, but then they actually need to seek employment, and how do we facilitate that opportunity and that outcome for that individual. So as I said, we're actually sort of looking at all those particular areas from our socio-economic duty, which is so important. And it's not about actually hard to reach, it's about actually have we listened to what they want. I think that's what we need to do. We need to actually look at, we need to go out and listen and understand and probably actually flex our sort of education to meet their needs as well. So I'll stop there and we'll take questions actually after. Thank you, Chris.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Push. I mean, that was a bit of a tour de force, that was, wasn't it? Between the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
There's been
we work in partnership.
Symbiosis. Well, now there's one question that I've seen from Maya Hopkin, who's joint chair of the Royal College of General Practitioners. Are there any plans to increase the target for recruitment in the near future? Push, do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I think the issue is that, and we talked about it already in other forums today, is about capacity. Yeah. When you think that we started at 135 when HEIW was first formed, going up to a target of 160 and exceeding that for 2 years, I think is quite an achievement already. So I think that that we're always going to keep looking at it, because if, for example, we go for 160 and we get well over 200 suitable applicants who want to come to us, then we have to start thinking that there are people who are there to be employed. We've got to also look at all of the factors affecting this, which is retirement rates, and I am aware that many GPs have chosen this time to say, this is where I'm going to end my career now, having had the difficult aspects of the pressure of work of COVID, and that many of them are working in a way that's different to before, and most people go along with that, but some people don't like it. And virtual consultations aren't for everyone. So there's a whole change that's happened to general practice that some people like and some don't. So we've got to think about that. We've got to think about retirement rates, the age profile, and the number of people who are coming into the system who'll go for it. That, just increasing numbers doesn't necessarily increase applications. So I think we'll look at the thing on a whole, and if we think that there is merit in increasing the numbers and we've got the placement capacity to do so, then I think we should look at that. But equally, there is another conversation about how we deliver primary care. And it's not just about increasing number of doctors, it's about how our multi-professional workforce can adapt to fill in the needs of our patients. So all of those things play a part in the discussion. So there's no simple answer to it, but we will keep it under review, I would say.
Of course, we would love to work with the BMA and the College of General Practitioners to make sure that people want to be training, want to be training, want to use the practices as the good training places they are. And I think the work that's been done to increase the number of trainers, and also not the usual suspects in a wider spread of the geography where these practices who are training are available. I think that's all been, really hard-earned work, but it's work worth doing. Are there any other questions that are coming through, Angharad, that I can't see?
No, Chris, that was the only question so far.
Okay, well, with that then, and I can see we've got a sizable number of we've got over 30 guests with us. With your permission, I'm going to move us on now to the leadership and succession presentation. And that's, Julie, are you leading on this?
It's a double act, Chairman.
Ah, who's the dynamic duo? Yourself?
So I'm absolutely hoping that Helen Thomas is here on the call too.
Yes.
Certainly am, yes.
Fantastic, always a relief.
I'll leave it to you two to get on with it then.
Thank you, Prynhawn Pawb. Thank you for sticking with us. Some might say save the best till last, but this is actually different. So it's another aspect of the HEIW's business that we're going to share with you today. And if you've been with us for earlier on in the day, you'll know we'll have talked about this and some of the things that we delivered last year in response to COVID. As one colleague described it, we delivered on speed, some of the compassionate leadership stuff. But actually, this is a fundamental part of our programme for the next 5 years. So Helen Thomas is the Assistant Director for Leadership. I'm the Workforce Director, and between us, with our wonderful team, we're going to show you what we've been doing and actually what we're going to be doing going forward. So at that point, I'm going to hand over to Helen, who's going to take you through a presentation, and then very happy to answer questions at the end. Thank you, Helen.
Many thanks, Julie. Many thanks for the opportunity of sharing this journey with you. I'd like to start, if I may, with just taking us back in time pre-COVID, which is hard to remember, but taking us back in time about 20 months ago. And I'd just like to share with you this 3-minute video of where we were in October 2019, prior to our journey. So if we can show the video, please, Jess.
Sound, Jess?
No sound, yeah.
Hang on one moment, we're just going to sort out the sound issue.
Oh, thank you so much.
It did work earlier when we tested it.
It's always the case, isn't it?
Live TV and all that. Jess has just whispered to me, this should work.
Leadership is everybody's business, and we've all got a responsibility for each other.
The purpose of today is to share the evidence, the best practice. It's to bring experience from other UK nations to take forward a collective leadership approach across health and social care Wales.
It's great to see so many people here who've joined us today from a range of organisations spanning health and social care in Wales.
When you become a leader, and you are all leaders in this room, we are here to support patients and those who need to work through our system to achieve better care. We owe it to our NHS Wales staff and to the public to ensure that we work to develop compassionate leaders within the workforce so that compassion becomes ingrained in our services.
I'm working with Professor Michael West, who kindly spoke today. Really, really informative. Michael's very passionate about compassionate leadership.
It's about interdependent leadership, leaders working together across boundaries, prioritising care for the people of the community overall. Reduce workload by developing multidisciplinary teams and developing roles within those teams so that we more effectively respond to demand. By managing demand, by looking at how we promote prevention and also how we work with our communities to help them take shared responsibility for our health service.
Leadership and culture is a huge theme that we've been exploring. I really think that it's going to be quite a priority area going forward in a wide programme of work that we're doing to support a profession under pressure. So I'm really excited to hear more about what different people in the room think about this and how it could be taken forward. And I'm really, really happy to see that it's part of Wales' strategy.
matters, everybody counts. And even though sometimes it feels like a very hierarchical approach, it's how do we make sure that this is about everybody who works and who wants to work in the NHS.
Thank you very much for taking the day out to be with us and to really help us shape what we've done today. So a round of applause to everybody in the room. Thank you very much.
It's such a pleasure to take time out of what is a horrendously busy job to talk about our people, our staff, our managers, our workforce, and to give some thought about how we actually help build a better NHS. And if we get this right, if we get our people right, if we get our staff experience right, as Michael has said, we will get our patient experience right. And that is what we're all here to do. It's all about the quality of the care that we give our patients. And to do that, we've got to care and look after our people.
Everybody comes to the same conclusion. People matter, and we want to do our best. Doesn't matter where you are in the system, Mrs. Jones and Di Bach are the most important.
Thank you, Jess. So that was the start of our journey on our compassionate and collective leadership approach. And you could sense, I guess, the passion in the room to make a difference, to create cultures and compassionate leadership strategies that would make a difference to how we deliver the services that we provide. And you can see we started off with a pretty much blank page there, but that vibrancy, passion and ambition throughout the day was harnessed to help us fill in, if you like, our journey. Towards the bottom of the page here, you can see a sound cloud, if you like, and what that does is epitomizes some of the messages that come from that room, but also some of the messages that came from our engagement on the workforce strategy. You can see there it's about empathetic leaders, adaptable and compassionate leaders. It's about a consistent or all Wales approach. It's about less elitism, or rather, as our chair just said, leadership being everybody's business. So we harnessed some of the words, the vibrancy and the passion in the room to inform our journey. And on the next slide, you can see then how we carved that up with the evidence. So we followed the figures and we looked at the evidence base to help us then map that journey, map that strategy for health and care in Wales. And on the left-hand side of the page, you can see a few publications. The first one was a literature review, and that was it took hundreds of literature reviews, and it was undertaken by the FMLM, or Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management, the Centre for Creative Leadership and the King's Fund, and together independent think tanks took away and looked at all of the evidence-based leadership literature reviews that have been undertaken to distill, if you like, what would be the core components of an approach for a complex adaptive system such as health and care. And what they come up with as a model is that our people in the service need compelling visions, they need a strategic narrative, they need clear objectives, they need good people management and staff engagement mechanism, they need learning, innovation and quality improvement to be underpinning the work that they do, and they need teams that are multidisciplinary and that work well together. So that was the evidence that was coming out to help us build our framework. But then further research by Michael West, Professor Michael West, and the King's Fund that spans 20 years or more, also linked the relationship between staff satisfaction and patient satisfaction. So in other words, the more positive staff are about their working conditions, the more positive patients are about the staff they receive, about the health and the care that they receive. And then going on to the bullet points you can see now, there's also a relationship between compassionate care given by the caregiver and the clinical outcomes that we have. And some of these bullet points are taken from that book there that you can see in the middle of the trilogy there, Compassionomics, and they have harnessed a number of randomized controlled trials to look at the correlation between compassionate care and compassionate leadership and the quality of care and the quality of outcomes for our patients and users. And I won't read them all out, but you can see a few bullet points there. That the first one was a randomized controlled trial where 50% of the anaesthetists were given a script of how to have a compassionate engagement conversation with a patient. 50% were not given anything. And the evidence suggests that those that engaged in a compassionate conversation and compassionate care found that their patients were calm but not drowsy. They needed 50% lower opiates post-surgery, and there was a shorter stay. The second bullet point there again articulates a controlled trial, and patients randomly assigned to compassionate palliative care survived 30% longer. So we followed the science, we followed the evidence, and that, along with what we were told by our workforce, our stakeholders, informed our approach to compassionate leadership. So I won't go through all of them, but we can circulate a digital playlist which brings together all the evidence for you. Thanks, Jess. If you can have the next slide. So that then created our approach to compassionate leadership, or our approach to our leadership strategy. So in our workforce strategy for health and care in Wales, leadership is one of the core components. And our leadership ambition is that by 2030, leaders in the health and care system will display collective and compassionate leadership. So it's a bold ambition, but we do have 3 strategic actions which provide a framework for helping us reach and create and achieve that ambition. The first action is around a consistent approach to leadership across health and care. The second action is around accessibility of leadership development resources and programs for individuals and organisations. And then action 27 was around how we manage and create talent pipelines for the most senior of roles in Wales. So what I'd like to do now is, through the lens of those actions, just share with you some of the progress and some of the work that we've been progressing. Thanks, Jess. So, informed by evidence, informed by what we know our staff and our stakeholders need, our approach to leadership development is going to be encompassed by the principles of compassion. And that includes the 4 pillars that you can see there. So we know that we've got a pillar there that's effective leadership, and that's about creating that shared, inspiring vision with aligned goals and teams working to those aligned goals to achieve that vision. Very much what we had in the first bit of evidence from that literature review. The second pillar there is around inclusive leadership. And again, that's around a shared vision, and that's around how we positively value difference, and we continually commit to having inclusion and equality throughout our ambition and throughout our approach to leadership and creating teams. The third pillar there is around collective or shared or distributed leadership. Very much as our chair said there, leadership is everyone's responsibility. So it's sharing the leadership across the teams where the expertise lies and having that consistent approach. Organisations, and again that's based on shared visions and values and mutual support, so we can actually transform the care we give across boundaries in a consistent and a compassionate way. And then those 4 pillars which create our approach to leadership are underpinned by compassionate leadership behaviours, and those compassionate behaviours are attending, understanding, empathising and helping. So what we've done is created a compassionate behaviours compass that tries to bring to life what that means as an individual or as a leader across health and care. So what we mean by attending, if we are leading people, it's about being present with those that we lead. It requires us to listen and to give that space for listening deeply, to understand that issue, listening with fascination, as Nancy Klein might say. The second element of compassionate leadership, or the second element on our compass here, is about understanding, and it's about really trying to ask questions, listen deeply, and understand the context of that individual's issues, maybe walking in their shoes and not imposing your understanding or your solution on that. The third area of our compassionate compass then is about empathizing. So feeling the strains, feeling the pains and anxieties and frustrations, but not being overwhelmed by them, actually taking action so we can do something about it. And then the fourth element of compassionate behaviours is about helping. And that's about removing obstacles. That's about providing resources, providing support, providing help. So we continually improve the quality of care that we give. So we've created those compassionate behaviours to support our approach to how we deliver leadership across health and care in Wales. So the third component of that, if we can go on to the next slide, is bringing that to life. So we know that we have a framework of compassionate leadership. We know that we have the behaviours that we want from our leaders and from our individuals across health and care. So what else do we need? How do we bring that to life? So what we did was then created compassionate leadership principles in consultation with Social Care Wales and Academy Wales. And this went out to significant consultation with our stakeholders. And we brought the themes together and created these 7 principles that we launched in May. And these principles help direct what we do. So as compassionate leaders in health and care in Wales, we will strengthen respect, voice, influence and choice. We will create environments where collective leadership thrives. We will develop supportive team and inter-team working. So that again gives us more guidance on our approach as leaders in health and care. But what we wanted to do was actually deep dive, take a bit of a deep dive into what that actually means for people. So peel back the layer. So what do we mean by strengthen voice, influence, respect and choice? So on the next slide, what we've done is brought these principles to life. And from last month and over the coming months, we're going to do what we call principle spotlights and put a bit of a spotlight on each of the principles, peeling back the layer and looking at, well, what does that mean? If we're going to do that as leaders and managers in health and create these environments, how do we do it and how do we do it well? So we're going to create probably like mini toolkits, and these toolkits will contain case studies, they will have research evidence, frameworks, podcasts, webinars, masterclasses, and a whole range of opportunities for individuals to just bring that to life a little bit and get themselves a mini toolkit for how they can create these environments across health and care in Wales. And this is just one of the interactive pages that we have on Gwella, where you can download these videos, these podcasts, these frameworks, etc. So I've mentioned Gwella. So what we have done, and if you think back to our second strategic action, which was access to leadership resources, what we did was had an aspiration to create a one-stop shop where anyone could access credible and evidence-based leadership resources to help them, whether they were a formal leader or whether they were an informal leader, and these would be accessible to everyone. So our ambition was to create this one-stop shop, but we've excelled out our ambition quite significantly. So what we've developed is Gwella, which was launched last August. It's a bilingual leadership portal. It's available to anyone. The web address is there. It's available to anyone, whether you're in health and care or wider than health and care. And we do know that our resources are accessed by our colleagues in NHS England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and our universities are using our resources also to underpin some of the leadership development that Lisa mentioned earlier on. So you can see this is the front page. The largest tile there is a rotating tile which shows all the latest research and evidence and articles that we've published. And then the other 4 basically say what they do on the tin. We've got our graduate programme, our talent programme. And then the orange area there is our resources, which if a user clicks on it, it provides a taxonomy of really useful resources such as webinars and articles and frameworks and podcasts, but it also allows a breadcrumb into other environments where we know are credible. So for example, you can click there to access articles from the King's Fund or from the Open University or from our intensive learning academies or from our organisations in NHS Wales. So it really does harness all the information we need in order to provide this open access and consistent approach to leadership across health and care in Wales. During COVID, we extended what this portal can do, and we integrated virtual classrooms. And this meant that we could continue to deliver leadership offerings, digital leadership opportunities, masterclasses, and also allow our organisations across health and care in Wales to utilise this virtual environment to deliver leadership programs out in the service. The next slide is just a bit of a headline with some of the data, some of the statistics that we pulled off recently. So you can see that Gwella, I know we've used it across our colleagues in Ireland, Scotland and Wales and our universities, but we've had 321,000 overall views on the pages and nearly 25,000 users going on to Gwella. We've also published nearly 230 resources, which is pretty good going over a 12-month period. So we really have progressed in this area in creating our approach to access on leadership resources. On the next slide, I then want to just draw your attention to what we've done about the third action, which was around our approach to leadership development and pipelines. And we've approached this in two ways. One way is around how we support individuals coming into the NHS and support them to progress as leaders and managers throughout their journey in the NHS. And we've done that in two ways. One way is around having an intern programme. So this year we invited some interns from Cardiff University to co-design with us what would a really good internship programme look like that would support them during their holidays as an interim into work and maybe into the NHS, but also maybe as a segue. So we would, so this year, they've come back, they helped us design this programme or co-design this programme, and we now have 7 interns with us that are experiencing the internship programme they developed with us. And we are really thrilled to be able to offer 2 year-long internships commencing also in September. The other thing then we've relaunched is the NHS Wales Graduate Management Programme. Some of the highlights there, you can see that we had 301 applicants for this relaunched and reinvigorated graduate programme. We took 99 to online tests, interviewed 55, and we have 21 graduate management trainees that will be commencing with us in September this year. So we have an introduction, if you like, into that pipeline of NHS leaders, and we'll support them through their journeys. We also commissioned and co-designed with our University of South Wales a Masters Leadership Programme, so they'll continue to experience work and study at the same time. On the next slide then, we are looking at the other end of our talent and succession pipeline, and this was around how do we identify aspiring executive directors or very, very senior leaders, and how do we support those through the journey so we have robust and sustainable pools of aspiring executive talent within NHS Wales. And we did this through the lens of how do we identify our talent, how do we develop our talent, and then how do we deploy our talent. So with regards to identifying our talent, we held Talentbury October last year, which was a 4-day virtual festival of leadership engagement and consultation. So as well as providing our aspiring talent with opportunities to develop their leadership skills, excuse me, we also engaged with them to say, what do you need in order to make that next step? So we listened, consulted, co-designed, and have come up with some ideas on how we develop that talent now. And then deployment of talent is the next phase for us. So if you can go on to the next slide, please, Jess. This gives us some idea of where we are in our journey of developing and deploying our talent at an executive level or a senior leadership level. And for the first time ever, we now have some indicative dashboards or indicative intelligence that tells us where our ready now talent is and what positions are they ready now for. When they're not ready, what is it they need to help them develop? So we'll be looking at how we support those journeys. So for the first time, we now have some identified dashboards, and we are going to continue to mature these dashboards. So we have that intelligence at our fingertips. So we know not only where our talent pipelines are robust, but we also know where our talent pipelines are not as robust, and we can target some interventions. So this gives us some great intelligence for really ensuring that we have our talent pipeline for our executive and very senior positions. Next slide, please, Jess. And this is some of the framework that we put in place to help develop our talent, our aspiring talent, in talent. We have an executive mentoring program that commenced in February, and we have 30 individuals on that. We're providing coaching. We've worked with the service and with the King's Fund to develop an aspiring executive program that we've called Leading with Compassion. And we have about 22 people on that. We've created a masterclass series where people can virtually join. We also record these, so we get really good value for investment, and we can also put then these masterclasses into our virtual library on Gwella, making them available for everyone. We're about to look at the online diagnostics that we've got, so working again with some experts, and Professor Michael West, who's worked as our critical friend during this period to establish our strategy, to look at how we assess ourselves as leaders and compassionate leaders. And we can do a self-assessment and a 360-degree assessment to look at where some of our gaps are. We've got aspiring director development centres scheduled for next year, and our clinical leadership programme will kick off towards the end of this year, which is multi-professional also. So we've got quite a good, robust talent framework that we are partway through and scheduled to continue throughout the next 6 to 12 months. Thanks, Jess. The availability of leadership resources, going back to our strategy of not just access to resources, but access to programs for individuals and organisations. Some of those are highlighted here. So we do run an introduction to compassionate leadership available to anyone across health and care in Wales. Introduction to clinical leadership. We've got the 3D programme on the next step, which is more about quality improvement. We've got our Wales Clinical Leadership Trainee Fellows, and we've recruited 14 of them this year. We've got advanced clinical leadership that we run in, and we've got our aspiring Leading with Compassion programme, as well as a bunch of resources, masterclasses and vibrant networks that we've got on Gwella supporting our clinicians and other professions. So that's just a summary of some of the things that we've got. Thanks, Jess. So you can see our blank page has filled up quite well as looking at what was needed. We followed the evidence. We've created our strategy in line with the activities and actions of our workforce strategy, and we have quite a clear route map on how we are going to achieve our workforce ambition that by 2030 leaders across Wales and health and care in Wales will be compassionate collective leaders. I'd just like to leave you with the final one. We've followed the evidence, and our leadership strategy has been informed by that. So we are therefore delighted to have supported Professor Michael West in the publication of this most recent book, which outlines case studies from across the UK as well as from Wales. And it also features the work that we've done in HEIW. This book reflects how compassionate leadership has enabled the NHS to respond to the largest crisis ever faced, and illustrates how compassionate leadership is going to be a cornerstone of our recovery and reset by creating cultures that prioritise the health and well-being of staff, promote inclusion and psychological safety, and create environments where our staff can thrive and continually provide improved quality of care to the communities they serve. You can see that this book has been dedicated to all that have served across health and care and those that have lost their lives as they've supported this pandemic. So we're really proud to have supported the publication of this book. And lastly, I think Michael is also very grateful and acknowledges the work of HEIW, and he says that we've supported this project from its start prior to COVID and consistently since. Our commitment to developing a healthy and happy population in Wales is embodied in our organisation's vision and culture. So hopefully that gives you a feel of what we've done, the passion, the inspiration and the science behind it. And it's just a privilege to be part of this journey. Happy to answer any questions with Julie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen. Julie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Helen and to the team for all the work they're doing and for what I thought was an excellent presentation, taking us back over our journey. That video always makes me feel quite emotional, and you've managed to get me emotional at the end too. So thank you for all of the work that is such important to the NHS in Wales, and I'm really proud, as you are, I know, to be part of it. Very happy to take any questions.
And Harrod, I can't see any questions. Are you aware of any?
No, Chris, I haven't seen any questions yet.
Right. You are right. That was quite an interesting experience watching that video.
Yes, I thought it might be.
Yeah, right. Well, if there are no questions, we still have 23 guests, and well done to the lot of you for staying this long. Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Alex, who'll bring proceedings to an end. Alex, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
Well done.
So yeah, no more slides, but just really to thank everybody who's presented today. Obviously we've had some executive directors presenting, but also members of our teams. And it is really important to remember that, you know, what we present and the work that we demonstrate as achievements of HEIW is all down to the hard work of our staff. Just wanted to make sure that we are thanking them sufficiently today. But also to thank the people who have attended, because I'm really chuffed that we've had at points over 30 people coming to our AGM and to the showcase this afternoon, which makes it all even more worthwhile for us to do, because we are conscious that people still don't always understand our organisation. We're still quite new, we're different to all of the other NHS organisations. So the fact that people have made the effort to spend the afternoon with us is absolutely incredible, and we're really, really grateful to you for that. And I know that doing it in this format sometimes doesn't really encourage people to ask questions. So if there are, you know, any things that we've talked about that you want to know more about afterwards, or just want to ask a question, then, you know, feel free to email us in HEIW and we can get back to you. And hopefully next year we'll be able to do one of these, but also perhaps do a face-to-face AGM as well, and that would be fantastic. So thank you ever so much for your time, everybody, both HEIW colleagues and colleagues and guests from across the system, and hope you have a nice rest of the day. Diolch.